Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to introduce a vlog. So I have been collecting clips for a vlog since the month of May started, and I have not yet done a vlog. So here we are. It is the third weekend of May. It is currently May 16th, Friday. I've just finished work. You can see behind me, it is a beautiful spring day here in Maine. And I'm like, I'm gonna do a vlog this weekend. Let's do a vlog this weekend. So that's what I'm gonna do. And I will intersperse clips that I have been collecting for the whole first part of May. It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter if they're chronological. I need to get over myself. All right, that's what we're doing. So what am I focusing on for reading this weekend? I am going to try really hard to finish this biography of Truman by David McCullough. I started this back in March. I have read 800 pages, over 800 pages. I am currently on page 800 exactly of this 1,000 page biography of Truman. And I am in the part right now where the Korean War has just started. Has it actually been declared a war yet? No, I don't think it has, but we're in Korea now. We're in the second term of Truman's presidency. This has been excellent so far. So I think I can do it. I think I can finish this weekend. That's the plan. And then the other book I'm going to be focused on is the last book that I have to read for the BookTube prize for this round. And that is Everyone Who Is Gone Is Here, The United States, Central America, and the Making of a Crisis by Jonathan Blitzer. I won't be able to talk about this in detail, but just to know, this is the other book I'll be focusing on this weekend because, like I said, it's the last one I have to read for this round of the BookTube prize. My current audiobook is the new Emily Henry, which I cannot remember the name of. I've only listened to the first 6 chapters of that. That is a buddy read with Doris and Katie, my romance buddy readers. So if I have some audio listening time, that is what I'll be listening to. And I am still working on Paiseworthy by Alexis Wright, which is a book that I'm buddy reading with Joe Smith. Originally was buddy reading it with Joe and Sean from Sean Breathes Books, but he bailed. And so Joe and I have decided, excuse me, but I have a hornet flying around. There's a lot of hornets around right now. Sean dropped out. He decided it was not for him. So Joe and I are continuing on, just the two of us. And yeah, that's what we're going to get up to this weekend. So hopefully I can finish Truman and maybe make some progress on the other things that I'm reading. It's Saturday night and I figured I'd do a little check-in quickly. I have read the next 100 pages of this Truman biography by David McCullough, and I'm just enjoying it so much. McCullough is such a masterful historian. He knows how to tell a story. He knows how to explain a subject in a way that gives you sympathy for that person. Sorry, I have I don't know which side. I normally hold the book on this side, but the shadow is in my face. And this is a very heavy book because it's over 1,000 pages of text, not including the notes. And there's a lot to say about about Truman, I guess. And David McCullough has done an excellent job, per usual, the way that he normally does with his historical nonfiction. So I didn't know a whole lot about Truman before coming into this reading. He's in between FDR and Eisenhower, and so he kind of has this place of like, I sort of had this idea that he was an average president, not really anything spectacular. And I guess after reading almost the entirety of this, I still have about 100 pages left to go. I think that is probably true, but I think that Truman, and McCullough is pointing out, Truman doesn't get a lot of credit for the things that he did do. And what he did do was, continue the policies and the programs that FDR had set out with the New Deal. He was very dedicated to the job. He was super hardworking. He was very patriotic. He just was the type of typical American of the times that you think about when you hear about middle America in the middle 20th century, people who believed that America was great and were willing to work hard to make America be better. He, pursued the course of what he felt to be the right thing at the time. Whether that made him popular or not, he would always try to do the right thing, at least what he felt was the right thing. And he did a lot of things that made him very unpopular, like firing General Douglas MacArthur, which he absolutely needed to do, but he was reviled for it for a while. And there were other things that he did over the course of, almost 2 full terms of being president that people really did not like. So his popularity went up and down over the course of his presidency. But in every case, when he was most unpopular, was because he had taken a principled stand on an issue. And people got mad at him about it, but he refused to back down on those issues that he felt very strongly about. So you have to admire that in a person. So he never backed down from something if he felt it was the right thing to do, even if it did not make him popular. So that's something I find to be quite admirable. And his wife, Bess, she did not want him to be president. She was not happy being the president's wife. She supported him and, did the things that she had to do as first lady. But it was not, she wasn't looking for the limelight. These were not people who were really looking to be, the top of the political game. Truman liked politics, but he wasn't aiming for the highest office in the land when he started out. And so how he got to be president, he was picked as FDR's running mate in the last go around of FDR being elected. And of course, FDR died quite soon after he was elected in that following spring. So Truman had to finish out that term, and then he got elected in his own right for a second term. And then he decided not to run. He could have run legally for another term, but he decided not to. And probably he would not have won if he had have run at that point, because he was quite unpopular at the end of his second term. And not for, he was unpopular, but in a lot of cases I feel like it was not justified, his unpopularity, because of course, I'm looking at this with the benefit of hindsight and knowing historically what happened after Truman was president. But in any case, McCullough does an excellent job of, just detailing this man's life and really bringing his personality and his strengths and weaknesses to light for the reader. So it's immensely readable as well. Like if you are looking to get into biography and you don't know where to start, I definitely recommend McCullough. He does a superb job of writing biography. So that's my update. I did also read 50 more pages of Paiseworthy by Alexis Wright, which brings me up to about, a little over 200 pages into that book now. Maybe 240 pages, something like that. And that's quite a long book as well. I'm reading it on an ebook and also listening to it on audio. And that's a really good way to approach that book because it's a difficult read. It is difficult literary fiction written by an Indigenous author from Australia. And it's all about, the Aboriginal the Aboriginal, the Aboriginal lot in life, being, living in a country where another group of people has come in and taken over the country, and now these groups that had already been there before have to sort of try to survive within the boundaries that these settlers have laid out for them. And the story of Paiseworthy takes place in the present day, during the climate crisis, and it follows a family, an Indigenous family, an Aboriginal family, in a town called Paiseworthy, and those members of that family are stand-ins for issues of Aboriginal sovereignty. And it's quite masterfully done as satire and as, a metaphor, but it doesn't make it necessarily easy to read. So I am finding the process of like listening to the audio and reading at the same time to be very, very helpful and allowing me to take in the story that's being told. So I'll have more to say on that one as I continue on with the read, but just wanted to update you on that. So been making some good progress on my reads, and as I said, it's Saturday night, and so I'm trying to contain this within a weekend, and I'm hoping to finish Truman by the end of the weekend. So we'll see if I can actually do that. So I'm here to wrap up the vlog. It is Monday morning, so my weekend reading vlog went very, very well. I was able to keep up with all of my buddy reads, so I got to where I needed to be on all the buddy reads that I have going. And I did start the last book that I have to read for the BookTube Prize and got several chapters of that read. And I completed the Truman biography, which is such a good feeling. Such a feeling of accomplishment to finish this humongous biography. And I have to tell you that by the end of this, I was weeping. And that is how you know it is a good biography. If a biography of a U.S. president can make you tear up, then, you know, the author is doing his job. And Truman is not somebody that I really had given a lot of thought of before I started this project. He's not a president that really sticks out in my mind. He kind of falls in that situation of like being in between some very, you know, some presidents that have gotten a lot more PR than Truman did. There's FDR, who was hugely impactful, and then you have JFK coming along right after it, and then the whole Nixon debacle happens after that. And so, like, Truman just kind of falls into that period of time in the United States, which actually, looking back on it, was highly, highly prosperous. The economy grew tremendously. There was like very little unemployment, like just things were, it was that post-war boom. Yes, there were problems. Korea happened, the Korean War happened in there, and that was not great. But history now, looking back on Truman, he shows up a lot better looking back in the rearview mirror than he probably did at the time. If you think about, like, when Truman came on board as president, he was vice president with FDR in his last term. FDR died only a few months into that fourth term. Truman has to take over, and they wait, like, I can't remember how long, but it's like at least 2 weeks, I think, before they tell him about the atomic bomb. And he is the one that ends up having to make the decision to drop the atomic bombs on Japan during the end of World War II. And that experience impacted him so much that when it came to Korea, he was like absolutely determined that the US was not going to use the atomic bomb again. That Korea needed to be a war of containment. It needed to be a war that did not escalate into drawing into Russia and China, even though China did get involved. It didn't end up drawing in Russia in a direct way. He just wanted to avoid World War III, and that was his goal, and he achieved that goal. So yes, Korea was a debacle in many ways, but it was also, Truman showed great restraint, whereas other presidents might have done things differently and the world would have ended up in a much different place. And when you think about that, it really does give you a lot to consider, like how that might have turned out differently had Truman gone along with some of his generals, and specifically MacArthur, and dropped the atomic bomb. I mean, and, there was just a lot of upheaval at the time in the U.S. with McCarthyism, and all that sort of thing. So, yeah, it was quite a time. And he was a very steadfast person. I mean, he was at the time, he was criticized for having a quick temper and maybe having, drinking too much and that sort of thing. But there was very little scandal attached to the Truman presidency. There was no scandal. He was very much in love with his wife, and there was never any suspicion that he was a philanderer at all. And he was just like sort of an everyday American person. And when he left the presidency, he was broke. He had to borrow money to move out of the White House and to move home. And the only thing that kept him afloat financially, who kept his wife and him afloat afterwards, was he had inherited some land that he shared with his siblings that they sold and split the proceedings. And he ended up it was like tens of thousands of dollars that he gained from that inheritance. And then he sold the rights to his memoir. He wrote a memoir. I mean, he told his memoir, and other people wrote it up for him in a 2-volume set that a publisher picked up, and they gave him a lot of money for that. And that is what he and his wife lived on in their later years. He was not a wealthy man, and he did not use the presidency to, financially gain from it. So it's just so interesting to read about a president like this in our current political climate, and to see the sort of wealth that presidents accrue at this point, and compare that to when Truman was president. It's a much different world. And yeah, so there's some things to be critical of for Truman, for sure. He was a product of his time. He was a white man in the middle of the 20th century from middle America. He had those issues, but he also was a very steadfast person, and he was very loyal to those that he cared about, and he was very willing to be the bad guy. He was very willing to make the unpopular decisions and stand by those decisions. So excellent biography. No surprise, David McCullough, just a master at the genre. So glad I finished this. And so I will now need to move on to Eisenhower. Eisenhower is the next president that I have to read about. So stay tuned for that. I'm glad to finally have gotten to the end of a vlog. I've been wanting to do a vlog for a while. So glad for that as well. Hope you enjoy some of the scenery from around Maine now that we're into springtime weather. As you can see out the window here, it's just raining all the time. Raining lately. It's just been raining. We've had 8 weekends in a row that it has rained. So we have had some sunny days during the week, work week, but the weekends have just been rain. So, and that is not forecasted to change in the upcoming weekend, Memorial Day holiday weekend. So at least everything's green, right? Everything is green now. Anyway, that's the end of the vlog. I hope you're all doing well and finding some great books to read. I will talk to you later.